In this video I will knit a bed wrap from the 14th issue of Passap magazine. It should be a very easy project to make. Before we get to the knitting machine, I want to tell you that finally YouTube allowed me to enable the channel membership, so if you want to support me and my work, you can become a member. And now I want to give a special shout out to my very first member. This is a moment I will always remember. Thank you again, Michelle, for being the first to join this journey. Now it's time for knitting. I will use different numbers of needles and I will knit different numbers of rows from the one given in the instructions because my gauge information is different than the one in the magazine. The width of the wrap should be at least 44 centimeters and the length 120 centimeters. The cuffs should be 20 centimeters in width and 15 centimeters in length, so use as many needles as you need to obtain these measurements. From my experience, make the wrap wider than 44 centimeters. The edges tend to curl and if it's too small it will only cover your shoulders. But be careful not to make it too big because the sleeves then will become too wide. Check how big you can make the sleeves, then double this number to get the width of the wrap. Now let's begin with knitting the cuffs. You need to have two of them, so knit two identical pieces. First, make sure the racking handle is in its lowest position. Now raise 50 needles on the front bed of the machine, 25 to the left and 25 to the right side of the center. Place the edge springs on the last working ones. Now raise 50 needles on the back bed and place the edge springs on the last working ones. You have to observe the needle roll. It should look like this. Set both locks to N and the stitch size to 3. Insert the orange strippers. Take the main yarn for the cuffs and knit one row. Set both locks to CX and increase the stitch size to 4. Now knit 2 rows. Set both locks to N and increase the stitch size to 5. Now knit 1 row to finish the cast on. Reset the row counter and knit 70 rows without changing the settings on the locks. Reset the row counter. Set both locks to CX. Remove the orange strippers and insert the black ones. Rotate the racking handle to its highest position. Now knit 12 rows. Reset the row counter. Move the lock to the color changer and take an eyelet with contrasting color yarn. Now knit 20 rows without changing the settings on the locks. Reset the row counter. Move the lock to the color changer and cut the yarn. Leave the eyelet in the changer, then slide the lock across the bed to drop the knitting. This is what the cuffs should look like after you take them from the machine. Now let's knit the wrap. First, make sure the racking handle is in its highest position. Raise 126 needles on the front bed of the machine, 63 to the left and 63 to the right side of the center. Put the edge springs on the last working needles. Now raise the opposite 126 needles on the back bed and place the edge springs on the last working ones. It should look like this. Start from left to right and arrange the needles on the front bed according to the diagram. You must have one working needle followed by 4 needles out of work. To arrange the needles on the back bed, first put the leftmost one out of work and move the edge spring to the right. Then continue following the diagram. Now you can see the needles up close. Move the right edge spring one needle to the right and put that needle into working position. This is not shown in the diagram, but since we will tuck on the front bed, it is a good idea to arrange the needles in a way that the end ones are on the bed that is not tucking. So as shown in this diagram, both end working needles will be on the back bed of the machine. Now set both locks to N. You may increase the stitch size if you want to get a slightly bigger and more lacy looking fabric. Insert the orange strippers and take the main yarn for the project. Now rotate the racking handle 3 clicks anti-clockwise. It must be in its lowest position. The needles should look like this. Now knit one row. Rotate the racking handle 3 clicks clockwise. Now knit one row to finish the cast on. Make sure there is a stitch in the hook of the leftmost working needle on the back bed. If there isn't a stitch there, use the orange tool to fix that. The other stitches should look like this. Now reset the row counter. Take a strand of the same color yarn and lay it over the stitches. Make sure both ends of the strand are going between the beds of the machine. Tie both ends together to form a loop and attach a weight to this loop. Now knit 6 rows. Reset the row counter. Remove the weight from the knitting. You may place 7 shaped weight hangers at each end and attach weights to the ends of the knitting. Now we have to start knitting in the pattern. First, knit 2 rows without changing the settings of the locks. Don't reset the row counter. Set the front lock to AX. Now knit 4 rows. Don't reset the row counter. Move the NX lever to N and knit 2 rows. Now move the NX lever to X and knit 4 rows. Move the lever to N and knit 2 rows again. Then move the lever to X and knit 4 rows. Repeat these steps until the row counter is at 740 rows. Reset the row counter. Make sure the NX lever is set to N and knit 6 rows. Reset the row counter. Pull out some yarn from the feeding eyelet and cut it. Remove all weights from the knitting. Thread the yarn into the double-eye bodkin 2 and sew off the stitches from right to left. When you sew off all the stitches, the knitting will drop from the machine. This is what the piece should look like. Pull the cast-off tail to gather the end until it is gathered to about 20 centimeters. You may use pins to keep it in place. I won't sew it on camera, so that's why I'm quickly showing you what you have to do. After the piece is gathered, take the cuffs, sew them together and remove the waste yarn. Next, you must do the same on the other side. This time you can't pull the cast-on tail to gather the piece, but you will use the ends of the yarn strand that will lay over the stitches in the beginning. Gather the piece first, then sew it to the cuff. After the cuff is sewn, you can remove the waste yarn. If you have watched my video for making a cut and sew neckline, you can use this technique to sew the wrap to the cuff when the cuff is on the machine and skip dropping it on waste yarn. You must note that this method won't make a very stretchy seam and it may not be suitable for the cuffs. Another thing you may want to consider is which side you will use as the right side of the wrap. The fabric is reversible and each side looks different, so it's up to you to choose which side will be the right side. This is what the bedwrap will look like after the cuffs are sewn. I sewed the cuffs on the machine using the neckline technique I mentioned, and the seam is not very stretchy, but I will be able to put it on since there is plenty of room for my hand. If you choose this method of sewing, you have to knit the wrap first. Now I will show you the other side. The seam looks pretty good as well. I'm sure I'm not capable of making such a beautiful seam by hand. At this stage you have to fold the wrap in half to form the sleeves. I will fold it with the right side inside. To make the sleeves I have to start from the cuff and make a 45 cm seam. According to the instructions, the seam should be 50 cm, but use clips and try the wrap before making the seam. If the seam ends too close to your shoulders, the wrap won't be able to fold down and cover your back. To make the seams, I will use the latch hook. This is what the sleeve should look like. I love to make the seams with the latch hook because they look very good both from the inside and from the outside of the knitting. This is the part that will fall down to cover your back. And here is what the other sleeve looks like. Once again, the seam looks very good. But what to do if the middle section is not long enough to cover your back? The steam will kill the acrylic yarn, so I will spray the piece with water and I will stretch it with my hands. Then I will leave the knitting to dry. This will preserve the texture of the fabric. In the instructions it's written to make the piece 44 cm in width, but I think this is not enough to cover your back. Keep in mind that if you make the piece too wide, the sleeves will become too wide as well. Now you can see what the wrap looks like after it has been stretched. The fabric stays textured and a bit stretchy. This is a test piece of the same stitch pattern, but it is steam ironed. It is looking good as well, but it is completely flat. When you compare both samples, you can see how bigger the small test pieces have become after the ironing. There are no wrong moves as long as you like the result. If you choose to iron the wrap, don't iron the cuffs. If you iron them, they will lose their elasticity. This is me wearing the bedwrap. When I'm knitting the next one, I will use all the needles of the machine just to make it a bit bigger. That's all for today. Have a nice day and see you in my next video.